Broadcasting from the far side of Enceladus, beaming in at the speed of light across the vast chasms of space, I'm Phelan, and joining us today, it's just Attica. It's been a long 3 weeks since we've done an episode. I know that's quite a while for most of you all. Though everybody here has been kind of sick, making the rounds, busy with work, Attica, and it's just been...
busy being exploited.
Exactly. I know.
I can't even say I work anymore. Like whenever I talk about work or my job or whatever, like I feel like just embarrassed and ashamed to talk about it, even though I know the person I'm talking about, unless they're a communist, has no fucking... What do you mean we don't need jobs? Why are you ashamed to have a job? You're supposed to have a job. I know they don't get it, right? But still, I feel ashamed to admit that, yeah, I'm trapped in this system where I am worked to an early death and not even allowed to have enough to eat in the meantime.
It's the millennial lifestyle. We're gonna work till we die because none of us will be able to afford retirement, even if we do make it to 65.
People seem to think it's weird that like I'm embarrassed of it because they just don't get it. They don't get it yet. I mean, really, we're just sort of waiting for someone to walk out, right? Like the only thing keeping someone from walking out and making it all make sense is the fact that people are still like pinning their hopes on Bernie Sanders and what is really social democracy, but people don't know what that word means, so they call it progressivism. Taking over the Democratic Party, of which progressives have like successfully primaried like 3 neoliberals or something like that. Like it doesn't work. You can't take over there. Like if a million social movements would have already done that by now. People are still like interested in social democracy, and if that weren't the thing, we'd already have Lenin out there in the soapbox telling everyone like how exactly it's all happening. And that'll happen, right? Probably, 2020.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm positive. See, my thing is like I want to work, I want to contribute. On the other hand, like I just don't want it to be just another bullshit job just to pad somebody else's wallet while I make pretty much nothing and
right,
into poverty. Like that's really what makes like work so dreary for most people. And then of course like you have people that are of course
it's pointless.
Yeah. And then of course you have people that are placed in jobs that they're kind of forced to serve the interests of capital in a way that is more aggressive and overt.
There's a reason why people who quote live their dream, right? Although it's also few and far between, but they're put on a pedestal to make it seem as much like, well, you can do it too, you're just not working hard enough. But the people who do don't really have a problem with the system because they have fulfilling jobs. They're jumping out of airplanes and rescuing people in the ocean, releasing wolves back in the wild. Something has a point, right? But no, most throw on the most uncomfortable uniform possible to remind us that we're a slave, walk up to our checkout counter and just scan plastic bottles that we know is just going to go in the trash. And then after work, we're going to be shamed for not doing enough about the environment and throwing plastic bottles in the trash. It's like, well, what do you think?
It's a plastic straw, thank you very much, and it's harming the environment.
Like liberals really do kind of shoot themselves in the foot, right? When they kick down at the lowest possible person who could possibly do something about it. Because all that does is make it easy for like the Republicans to come in and those annoying vegan environmentalists who like keep insulting you because you dare to have a bottle of Coke or whatever, right? Person processing it, really it does seem like they're being a jerk. Like what do you want me to do about it? What do you think would happen if I refused to sell the bottle, right? Like I'd just be homeless and then you'd have me arrested because I'm outside your door, ruining your view.
But one thing I did want to discuss here before we do get on to some of our more main topics is there was a massive march in India of farmers from mostly southern India, which went all the way to New Delhi. India is a big country. It's almost the size of Europe. And we were talking 30,000 people marching up to the capital.
It was 300, wasn't it?
No, yeah. Fuck. It is. See, this is what happens like when you have to translate numbers in your head, right? So
India has a weird number counting system.
Yeah, India does. Yeah, India does. So it's 300,000 India counts in lakhs for large numbers, and a lakh is 100,000. And for some reason, because like the term 10,000 is used a lot in Hindu literature and whatnot for meaning like innumerous, for some reason my brain always flips to 10,000 instead of 100,000. But nonetheless, this would be like the equivalent of 87,500 people marching on Washington, D.C., just getting up and going. And not just like any people. These are 87,500 people that are all carrying red flags with white hammer and sickles on them.
And this isn't the first time they've done this either. Like they amassed actually 30,000 when they marched to Kerala,
yes.
Yeah, the capital of the province where the Communist Party had been in power for like 30 years.
Right, before the BJP ousted them, yeah. And they weren't happy at all about that. There was concern that there may have been election fraud and all sorts of this and that. This all falls on the heels of the Indian government conducting this like massive Maoist panic that's going on, where they're just accusing people of being Maoists that, you know, drum up and scare people so that they can basically kill the movement, because they got on the western side of the southern half, you got the CPIM Marxists, and then on the eastern half, down in the south of India, you got the Naxalites, which are Maoists, and they're kind of all working together against the government, and the government wants to just put a stop to all of it.
God, could you imagine? It might compel China to unrevision, or even to trigger, a second actual socialist revolution in China if that were to happen.
Well, if India went actually communist, that would definitely create I think it would actually create more tension between China and India than there is now, because there's a lot of tension there right now, because the inclination of communists is to liberate oppressed people, right? And so like their view in India would probably be a little bit more confrontational on some grounds, but then on the other hand, they would also have to toe this line where they would have to kind of work with them at the same time, because they're not all pro-China just because they're communist in this sense. And
well, of course,
yeah.
Because China's not really even a social democracy. Like, I know I just pissed off like half of our leftist like listeners, right? Like, but there's, they have the hammer and sickle. It's like, yeah, okay, and they're doing imperialism in Africa, so like, shush.
Well, I'm sure that it's all to a good means, and they're industrializing the continent. There's a lot of arguments to be had there. There's a lot of nuance on that one, and so like
what, you think they're gonna industrialize the continent and then just say, here, have your revolution? Like,
no. See, I'm not that naive, right? Like, I understand like it is a move. To be fair, it is more than what the West has done in Africa, and this is actual infrastructure that if they were to have a revolution, they could use. Right,
they wouldn't. Yes. It wouldn't peter out in 10 years once they realize, well, fuck, we have our farms.
So this is not something that's like easily destroyed or anything like that. Whereas like before, like when America would go over there or Europe would go over there, it was always just enough industrialization to get whatever needed to be extracted out. That was it. Just bare minimum.
It'd be great is if India had a revolution, none of us would be able to pay our bills.
Oh my God.
That's a bad joke. But seriously, could you imagine suddenly like, the Indian tech support and call centers just gone? What would business do in the US? Holy shit, like the second largest place that we outsource jobs to. That'd be a great thing for the labor movement here too, because suddenly we have things coming back to this country. The jobs are coming back. That'd probably make Trump look good though, because he'd take credit for it.
He'd take credit for anything. Like that's what he does. Is anything good that happens, he takes credit for it, and then anything bad, it's somebody else's fault. It's Obama, whatever. It's the liberals. They're not working with him, so it's somehow their fault.
And call centers are hell too.
Oh God, they are. I've worked in 2, and I hope I never work in another call center again. Ever.
Well, it's really weird because like we don't have factories in this country anymore. We don't have industrialized jobs, but even the unindustrialized jobs are starting to organize themselves like factories do. Like the day of the, hi, I'm your friendly manager is kind of dying. And it's like we are going back to a factory floor style of segregation and atomization of the workforce with bosses who just plain don't care to pretend to be your friend. They're the warehouse foreman and they're the call center director, and they're going to let you know that if they want you to hang, you're going to hang.
It's just micromanagement is what it is. It's micromanagement and it's performing tracking on every level. And it really doesn't matter what job you do. Retail stores do this now, where I know, like, when I worked at Walmart about 10 years ago, they actually introduced like an accountability book to everybody where you had to like sign where you did your tasks and what time you did, like you were a kid. I kid you not. And then you had something called the zone manager whose entire job was to make sure that you filled out that book.
We got one of those kind of things. I worked at like Staples for like in the middle of the recession. Only fucking job I could get. Only job like was this Staples job. They tried to introduce something like that and it didn't fly. We would have these stupid store meetings and we'd all supposed to go and get this pep talk, and you told all the new bullshit that we were introduced to, and they tried to introduce this thing and just no one signed it. It just sat in a book under the desk and a clipboard.
It's only used for the purpose of reprimanding. It's only used if they have a problem with it. That's the thing. It's like selective enforcement. 9 times out of 10, like, it could just get away with doing it. But if there ever was a problem, suddenly it was like, oh, why didn't you sign the book? Or, you know, it's just like, well, we were busy that day. It was like, you want me to every 15 minutes come around and sign your book? You have to stop what I'm doing? I mean, come on.
And one of the first things I figured out about being in the quote workforce was that you, like, 9 times out of 10, you had to avoid your managers getting done. 9 times out of 10, they were going to come and fuck up your work and stop you working. And then the next manager would come in and yell at you for not having had it done. So, like, that was rule number 1. It was just, you fucking move to another aisle if you see the manager coming, because he's going to come and fuck up your work. I used to take this approach that we should, in radicalizing workers, have them approach like the CEO and the SEO and all the big suit names as their adversaries, not necessarily go after like middle managers or direct managers, because the I'm your buddy, happy, friendly manager was such a powerful thing that a lot of workers really actually thought that their managers were their friend until they were fired, and suddenly like their managers ignoring their phone calls and invitations to like go out to have fun or whatever. So all those fake friendships, people think they're real. But now I don't necessarily have that position because that's kind of dying. And workers are really just being roboticized if they can't actually be replaced with actual robots.
Well, if you're looking for a great job, I do hear that Amazon is hiring in Phoenix, and they have a nice Twitter bot army that has reassured us everything is okay. So the claim is that all these people are people that have been pulled from the warehouse floors and whatnot. The jobs that they claim that they do are the positions that they've had.
Those are not warehouse floor people, okay? That PR language and dialect is too refined to just be a guy from the warehouse.
I don't know if it's refined as so much as Stockholm Syndrome-ish, or even please send help if I blink twice. No, because it really is. It's PR language. If they pulled someone from the floor and had them do this for like a $100 bonus or whatever, A, it would sound even less real than it already does, and B, it would be full of like slang language, right? Like it'd be full of, you know, just common everyday speech, not the incredibly refined. I did notice that. So if this were real people, and I understand like some of them were like older people, none of them like posted like any memes or anything. There were like no jokes or anything. Like it was like totally sanitized personalities. So that's kind of like one of the things that I did notice, is that either these were PR or HR, so public relations or human resources people that were doing this, or anything that they posted had to have gone through somebody. For these people to be doing this as often as they are doing for every post to be approved, I really doubt it. So that leads to the conclusion of these people are probably just human resources or PR.
It's too practiced. I mean, maybe it's the floor managers and floor supervisors, but from my experience, warehouse floor managers and shift supervisors are gorillas. They're trying to figure out how to fucking run a bulldozer over you to get you to work harder. They do not have the finesse or the interest or care in being a PR agent. They clap their fists and yell really loudly at you if you're not working fast enough. So I highly doubt it's even that. I highly doubt you're even pulling like shift supervisors or floor managers to do that.
The part that I like the most about this is like so much of it is just the denial of the state of affairs. Like so much of it focuses on, oh no, we're actually not being paid minimum wage. You know, I get swag and stocks, bonuses, and oh, the bathrooms are incredible. I go to the bathroom like 20 times a day. I just took a mega dump like 20 minutes ago. Like I used my entire 30-minute. Yeah, I used my entire 30-minute break, right? And then one of them was like, oh, and I get 2 30-minute breaks on my 10-hour shift. And it's like, okay, come on. I've worked jobs where it's high energy like that, and if you're only getting 2 30-minute breaks and you're running around on foot across a football across a football field sized warehouse, you're talking miles of power walking and running, and they have these little like handheld scanners and bracelets on them that are like Fitbits that pretty much just track all of their performance, so they know how long it takes them to locate an item, find it, scan it, and get it to where it will be boxed.
How do you have a manager slap that thing on your wrist and not immediately make the connection that you're a slave?
Or just like cattle.
Happen for everyone. Yeah, or
like
just cattle.
It's human cattle at that point. There's only 2 living things pretty much that you put tracking devices on: cattle and felons, right? So
yeah.
I mean, these people are basically being treated like felons so that they can have their performance monitored, and if they're off by even just a few seconds, if they don't grab the item in time, the machine logs it, and then they get a performance dock for, you know, a 3-second mistake.
What do you want to bet it's really common to be framed for theft so that they can actually arrest you and send you to prison?
I don't want to speculate on that because that could get us in trouble. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that they do a lot. I know that there are a lot of businesses where if the manager doesn't like you, that's a thing that they'll try to pull on you. I've worked for a few businesses like that. But the whole like grand irony of all of this is that even like Tucker Carlson, right, came out and said, no, wait, what Amazon and what Walmart and what all these companies run by these modern day robber barons, well, he didn't use that term, but that's what they are. All of these companies, Amazon, Walmart, Uber, they all can't pay their employees a fair and living wage. And Tucker Carlson nailed like the first half of his segment, right? And it was great. And then he like takes a total dump on the second half and just blames, it's the government's problem and not anything else. But it's
crony capitalism,
crony
not capitalism.
But it is kind of interesting. Like Tucker has these like lucid moments every now and then where he gets there and he says the right thing. Like he says like when he was talking about like Syria like a couple months ago, and we covered when he did that. It's amazing how they're able to like come to right up to the doorstep, right? And they just can't grab the knob and turn the handle.
Well, you know, a lot of it is they have to end up blaming the government and the left, etc. Maybe he even has a little bit of a point, because it's not like Democrats put up any resistance to laws that allowed the economy to be organized this way. It's not like they said, hey, wait a minute.
That is the correct assessment that Democrats didn't, but like Tucker Carlson isn't right in that analysis because that wasn't really his analysis. Democrats are criticized because of their big government and everything, but the ironic part is that Democrats are just as guilty of deregulation as the Republicans are. They did nothing but deregulate under Clinton. And then also under Obama, like the banking regulations under Obama that were passed were a freaking joke. And now
all of this could have been fixed had Obama just bailed out the people once. Even if he just bailed out the people once and then did all the deregulation, but people had enough money and saved enough of their houses, kept enough of themselves off the street to continue to keep the credit game going, there wouldn't be this resentment, right? Like, there'd be that one thing that was done right, and there wouldn't be this resentment. We'd still be in economic trouble. It wouldn't be gee, what'd you do besides fuck me as hard as you could and then told me to fuck off? Like, what was it? I saw, like, this thing the other day. I forget, maybe it was Jimmy Dore, I don't know. But it made the point that, like, the very same people that Obama is now going around the country and shaming for not voting, not coming out to vote, not trying to do anything enough to save the party in America or whatever, are the same people who came out and voted for him for the hope and change, and then saw banks and car manufacturers bailed out, and they got nothing. They just fundamentally can't conceive of even who they're talking to. If you took them and distilled it down to one person, they ran over your cat and then are lecturing on you on how to be a better cat owner. You know, it would make sense. It would be mind-blowingly stupid if it was distilled back down to one person, but they can't conceive of the idea of there being any alternative but them. And so they just tell you how much you're fucking up by not letting them continue to destroy your life.
The candidates are a farce, and then they wonder why they don't win elections. And then on top of that, even when they do get good candidates in, the GOP plays all of these dirty tricks to basically ensure that they do win elections. Like, we have a story here where the GOP was using the ADA, that's the American with Disabilities Act, to close down polls in mostly minority communities, and these were heavy blue districts. And so this is really nothing more than another example of, this isn't exactly gerrymandering, because gerrymandering is where you carve up the districts. This is them just making it harder for people to get to the polls by saying this particular voting station or elections office does not have the required number of disabled parking spots, or it doesn't have a ramp or whatever. And because these places are located in areas that don't get a lot of funding, they may not be able to afford those kind of things. And interestingly enough, like, the government kind of knows this and has this kind of logged at mostly the state level. So it's like one of the places that it happened in was like Randolph County, and they actually had an extension so that they could fix these issues eventually. But the state decided that they were still going to cut funding from it, which made it hard for them to do it. And then when the inspector, who is buddies with the lieutenant governor in the area, who's running for re-election and is Republican, goes out and look at these places and inspect them, then they ding them for being out of compliance.
And, you know, it's just, like, I wonder if there's an easy way around that if you post, like, a specific person to help disabled people, to, like, pull the chair up into the place, to manage disabled parking or whatever. But probably not, because, like, the whole point is to shut down voter places. But
one of the things that really does need to be done, we need to make voting a lot easier. So the first thing we need to do is, one, we need to make
it something to vote for.
Right.
First.
Well, but also election day proper needs to be a holiday, but also states need to keep the polls open for like at least 3 days, and I'd even say like a week. They keep the polls open a week. That way people have time. They're not lining up and everything. It's not a big wait. Provide mail-in ballots to everybody just automatically as well. And then...
Yes, but then working people would vote. See, here's a question. Here's what's increasingly becoming more and more unclear to me, and maybe means that our assessment of the situation is wrong in some respects, and that when this happens, and when the Koch brothers funded shadow puppet whatevers send out mailers with the wrong voting day or the wrong address to go and vote at, etc., to Democratic districts, why Why, when the Democrats every single time vote to confirm all the Republican judges, all the Republican appointees go along with the tax breaks and the military spending?
So you have a system here, right, that makes it difficult to participate in the system, especially if you're in one of these areas like the Randolph County incident. 7 out of 9 of their polling places are due to close in an area that is 61% African American. And then the other targets were neighborhoods in Chicago, Richland, South Carolina, Cocosino County, Arizona, which is mostly Native American. There's also a couple other places in Arizona they had mentioned as well that were mostly Native American that were also targeted. Chesapeake, Virginia, and Monroe County. The only one of those that was primarily majority white was Monroe County, Illinois. And I could almost bet you that more than likely that's probably a poorer district, and they were probably chosen to be like the red herring so that they could say that it wasn't racially targeted, even though all these other districts that were singled out here, there very much is a correlation. Not only are we making it hard to vote, the candidates that we have that are running, they're uninspiring, so it just makes it so easy to disengage.
Right, except for like the howling Russia soccer moms who are like, we'll vote for them no matter what.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, the only people that are really hardcore Democrats at this point that really care about the party are the Russia people.
The Russia people are Russia people because they have something to lose if it turns out to be anything but Russia, and turns out to be actually, our political system is broken and no one can afford houses, and people need to be paid more, and because that will negatively affect them economically. So it's got to be Russia.
That doesn't preclude the fact that like there is something there. I mean, we just had 2 people indicted on 16 charges, and then you had the whole
Those charges were all regular, boring old Washington corruption. Like there may be something there, but at this point, it's 2 years in.
Right, it's 2 years in. What are we gonna do? Like,
what are we waiting for? Like in the beginning, I believed it. Right, in the beginning, I was willing to go along with it. As time went on, it got muddier and muddier, and it seemed they were picking smaller and smaller pops to be the bombshell, the smoking gun of it all. And every day throwing up a new smoking gun to the point where it's like, okay, when are you gonna get to it? You banked everything on this thing, and you're not paying off on it at all.
And what makes this dangerous is that all of these people that keep pushing this, none of this has really come to fruition. Really, we're not having impeachment hearings. We're not having the 25th Amendment hearing yet. Nothing's being produced, and this is all the Democrats want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the working class issues because they have no position.
They don't even have to talk about the working class issue. Like, we could be talking at this point right now, Democrats could be scoring points by talking about how Trump has fucked himself and fucked farmers and milk producers and steel industry and miners with the tariffs and the trade wars. And that alone, because he's fucked with, the bourgeoisie's profits, would gain them many more points. I mean, it'll fall on deaf ears for most voters because they won't really care, but it'll score them political points with the side of the bourgeoisie in the Republican Party that really don't like that this big of a fuck up was allowed to happen, and could totally win by saying, hey, we're just going to go along with the kickbacks and the deregulation. We don't really care about the working class, but we'll fix this tariff stuff. We'll get you your money coming back in. That's a wedge they could drive. Not to talk about working class problems. Like, there's an angle they could go with right now and dump the whole Russia thing. And the news can, make people forget what they were doing a week ago. Like, people forget a month ago they were ready to storm detention centers with guns to free the children, right? Like, just a week went by, the news cycle shifted, and now no one even thinks.
I mean, America has like political amnesia if it's more than 3 or 4 weeks back. The whole trade war thing is a bit of a working class issue, because even though it does it affects like the bourgeoisie, but it also affects the working class, because people are losing their jobs because of this, right?
Right, but still, like, in a class collaborationist type position, we need our bosses to make good profits so we continue to be able to slave in the fields for them and be serfs, because a lot of them really are just serfs to Monsanto. They have to buy seeds that will grow plants that can't reproduce, so they have to go back and buy more seeds, so they can't just use the seeds of the crop that they just grew. They don't actually own the land they're farming on. It's all rented because Monsanto bought it out, when they were about to lose it in the recession. So a lot of them are just plain serfs. So it would be a class collaborationist viewpoint to say, like, you got to care about your company's profits and how they're being hurt by these tariffs, because if you don't, you just won't be able to be a serf anymore. It does have a working class point to it, but not a real liberatory one. More of a, do you want to keep your job one? I'd rather they left that issue alone and just forgot about it, because then there's an inroad for the party, the us, to go in and say, well, why do you need their job in the first place? Just take the land, take the chickens, take the corn, gives us a place to support them. Yeah, they don't have to do this Russia stuff. They can attack Trump legitimately in a way that the bourgeoisie will care over his fuck ups with tariffs, but they don't.
And in the meantime, I mean, like, Trump is just he's towing this alt-right line and has all of these all white nationalists to use the barking points joke, as they like to do. Hey, I'm sorry, you guys, but I had to steal your joke, okay?
Is that where the oops all came from? It came from them?
No, it's a meme, but like they like to use it, so I'm stealing it.
Well, let's see if it's a meme.
Well, whatever, Ace Millennial Dog, come after me. I don't care. I will joust you any day, verbally or otherwise. And actually, that would actually be kind of fun to get everybody on a show and do like a mega show. We should do that. We should reach out. I really do like what they do over there. So if you listen to us and if you want something a little bit more lighter, yeah, go check out Barking Points. They're great. Yeah, so Trump administration, like 2 White House officials have had to resign over links now to white nationalist organizations or individuals. So one of them was Larry Kudlow, who palled around with Peter Brimlow, who is an editor and writer for VDARE, which is a white nationalist publication. And then Ian Smith, who had some very well-connected ties to people in the alt-right community, including Richard Spencer. His is like particularly egregious because it's more than just like a friendship with somebody. Like he was actually hosting some like Toastmasters for the alt-right, basically. And during the course of this, he described his home for a dinner party as being Judenfrei, which is the German term that the Nazis used to describe territory that had been, quote, cleansed of Jews. And then to top it off, like, he kept making this joke. Like, he would say, like in his email, they don't call it Freitag for nothing, which is like a double entendre involving the German word Friday and the Judenfrei thing. So it's obvious, like, where these people stand.
What I want to know is, given that these people are all like 10, 20 years older than us, where did they pick this stuff up? Like, wouldn't there be some history of them being skinheads in Chicago or something to pick this up? Because it's not like they were enculturated over 4chan.
I just kind of always had this like feeling that maybe, just maybe, they've always kind of been like this, and that this is their excuse to come out of the woodwork.
But where does one even pick this information up? Because, like, I could have read the manifesto on my own, but it would have meant nothing if I didn't have other communists to make sense of it all with me, right? You can't just become a Nazi in a vacuum.
they have their own like cultural circles and stuff like that online, and they share traits. So even if like your only connection is like Stormfront or whatever, like so many people that visit Stormfront are channers, for instance. You have that crossbreeding of memes and everything, and just culture that.
So these old people are savvy enough to use the internet, essentially.
Did you know that Facebook actually has like a following among older people? It's really popular among baby boomers. Like that's their social network.
Well, yeah, I knew that. I mean, it used to be popular for everyone, but millennials have pretty much ditched it. White nationalism is not as easy as Facebook.
It spreads in like the private Facebook groups. Like that's one of the big problems Facebook actually has, is that so many of this is actually like, it originates on 4chan. They spread it through chain emails, you know, like the old school. Right. But also they introduce this stuff into private Facebook groups. And some of these Facebook groups have thousands of people in there.
You know, there's like a gaming furry chat I'm in, and there's this one guy that forwards all these memes that are always like, duh, those uppity black people, basically what they all amount to, and no one fucking calls them on it.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what it is, but this is also like, you have to think about it, it's already like boomers, conservatives for the most part. It's a private group, they already know what it is. And there's a reason that it is private. It's so that they can have their free speech zone and they won't be held accountable.
I guess I'm kind of amazed that boomers figured out how to use the internet. Essentially is where I'm at.
It's not that hard. Like, how were we able to figure it out? Like, people make a big deal about like, oh, like, it's just natural to us but really, like, it isn't really that hard. You sit down with somebody for 20 or 30 minutes, make sure that they get it, and then they're off, they're good to go. Yeah, maybe they get a virus or something or whatever, but
my grandmother had 20 toolbars installed and figure out how to navigate a file system.
Well, that's just like Pokemon, but for Internet Explorer.
Pokemon? Literally, the little paperclip and the purple gorilla that everyone used to have on Windows XP.
You're talking about Clippy, and Clippy is my homeboy. I did not actually use the paperclip. I used the wizard. I thought the wizard was cool.
They had a wizard?
Yeah, they had a wizard. They had a dog.
Had the paperclip.
Yeah, Clippy had multiple forms. He had a wizard named Merlin, I believe, because duh. And I don't remember what the dog's name was. But like, getting back to this, Trump's pandering to fascism, it isn't like a bunch of like one-offs, right? This is like a consistent thing that he does. I mean, he chose like Steve Bannon for his advisor at one point. And yeah, he did fire him, but whatever. The fact of the matter is that like, there are still white nationalists, like avowed white nationalists in his administration. They just keep coming out of the woodwork. We just keep finding out new stuff every day. When you have a president that calls African nations shitholes, when they defend alt-right terrorists like the kind that marched on Charlottesville and called them good people, while calling Antifa domestic terrorists for standing up to them, when you're ramping up the detainment of children and ripping apart families to enforce the law, and banning citizens from Muslim countries from entering the United States. And then on top of that, the Muslim ban doesn't even cover like the one country that most Islamic terrorism comes from, which is Saudi Arabia. The only countries that are on that ban are the ones that America always has a beef with. Also, interestingly enough, they're all the countries that Trump doesn't have properties. Go figure.
Okay, so like newsflash, Trump is a fascist. He might not be in the style of a Nazi, but he's definitely a Mussolini classical liberal, classical fascist. He might not be reinventing, Christianity and measuring people's skulls, and creating a new mythos for the nation. But he's definitely Mussolini.
Well, see, his underlings all do that for him. He doesn't need to.
But they don't though. Like,
well, yeah, they do. They
I don't
have
see
their
a
own
new mythos for the nation being built. I just see like the same shit Republicans have talked about for 30 years being ramped up to like 20. And just looking ridiculous to most people. I don't see regular common people parroting like the flag and soldier and cop worship, right? Except for flag worshipping soldier cop. So like you see that car going down the road with the snake flag and the blue line flag and the Trump sticker. That's an outlier. You just hope he gets rear-ended at the next light. They're not really doing the new mythos for the nation thing very well. They're not really doing the worship the ground George Washington walked on and like revisioning them to all be proud slaveholders or whatever, you know? Like it's that part kind of is not, they're not really doing.
Well, I mean, what they are doing, and albeit badly, they have been caught multiple times trying to infiltrate leftist circles on the internet. They tried to actually go after people in Reddit, which is like a left-wing alternative to Reddit. And
this exists?
Yes, it does.
Was it really how do you do, fellow kids?
I don't know. I've not been to Reddit or Reddit.
No, I mean their infiltration was.
So the infiltration was like what you would expect. They keep saying, oh, like you gotta be able to be like them and everything. And they always do such a bad job at like creating the facsimile, right? The one dangerous thing though that I do want to point out that they are using is something that you need to be aware of. If you see a short link pointing to a source and it's from an untrusted source, don't click it. And the reason is because one of the things that they were doing is they were using.
It's like the oldest fucking thing.
It is the oldest trick in the book, but they were
taking
like
alt furries IP addresses by doing that. That's the stupidest fucking don't.
Right. So like don't click on just random links, and everybody should know this. And if you do, if you feel like you're inclined to click on a tiny URL or whatever and you don't know the source of it, then use a VPN, and you can get free VPNs, or you can just even use Tor. And if you're really paranoid and want to use Tor, disable that JavaScript as well. That way it makes it a little bit harder to get de-anonymized. But really, at the technical level we're talking about here, probably not much of a risk of that. The other end of this like campaign that they were doing is, of course, they were out there, rating, left-wing forums and everything, and how do you do, fellow kids. The second part, and this is more disturbing because this is where it actually gets into actual recruitment, is that they are going back into the fandoms, like the furry fandom.
Oh great, we got cops in the furry fandom now.
No,
all those fursuiters who go to cons and dress up as cops, they're actual cops.
They're the Blue Lives Matter crew is what it is.
God.
Basically, Griffinir is he's seeking to clean up the fur affinity.
Griffinir's a cop.
He is not a cop. Stop.
No.
You're
Griffinir is not a cop. Do not spread that. Do not quote me. Griffinir is not a cop.
Griffinir is nice. I like Griffinir. In fact,
I thought Griffinir was Two Griffin for like the longest time until I realized.
I thought that it was like a parody of like Dragoneer and Two Griffin for the longest time as well. So I'm guilty of that too. Sometimes you choose a name and then like associations happen and it turns out not to be good. But like, on its own, it's a nice name. But yeah, Griffinir spoke to Dragoneer about becoming a mod in FA because on Fur Affinity forums, alt-right, alt-furries, again, oops, all Nazis, there we go again, Millennial Dog, please don't sue us. He exposed this admission where alt-right furries were trying to indoctrinate 12 to 18-year-olds in various circles. And they were just bragging, oh, we're red pilling them left and right. Now, I don't know about that as to whether or not that part's true. I just think that they just hook one or two and then Like, that's their big success. And then turn off everybody else, because any rational person that looks at this, like, knows, right?
Well, right. But then you see this a lot in furry groups, right? Where someone will post this racist meme shit, it won't get called out on. And then if you call it out, you're the problem because you disturbed the fake pretend peace where we all pretend that we're friends. And you disrupt, more importantly, you disrupted the masturbatory fantasy, right? And brought the real world in. You ruined the magic. And furry really needs to get over that.
It's not their fault for sharing a grossly inappropriate meme and touting near genocidal, if not genocidal, opinions. It's your fault for getting upset that somebody did that, and you should have to tolerate it, which is bullshit. You should never have to tolerate it.
Why am I just an SJW for getting mad at someone's icon having a legit, like, full Totenkopf Nazi hat? The fucking hat that bombed my grandfather. The hat that fucking killed his father and shot him down over Italy. Like, why should I not be fucking mad that you're wearing that in your gigantic fucking muscled SL avatar with your huge horse cock hanging out of your slung with your Totenkopf hat, thinking you're looking so cool?
I can guarantee you 10 out of 10 chance here that they are not as well endowed as their SL avatars.
And when admins don't just ban, instantly just shut the fuck up when someone posts like the low-level racist meme, right, and trying to be all edgy, is all they're doing is they're communicating to the room that, well, you guys don't matter as much as not hurting this Nazi's feeling. They want to keep that masturbatory fantasy. Oh, we're looking at the porn, we're looking at the games, real life isn't here, real life doesn't exist, doesn't matter, we're all furries, we're all happy, we're all Murray Purry, and like, just no politics, no problems. All that does, by not getting rid of the Nazi meme shit, because they're, quote, not breaking the official room rules or whatever, it just alienates everyone else in your room. And they either shut up or stop talking or quit and leave until you're just left with a room full of Nazis who have now taken your chat room and just made it into a Nazi meme channel.
That's what their goal is all the time.
That's what they want.
That's all they want to do, is go in and take over every single community that they can, just like they did with the anime fandom, just like they did with video games.
Because they know that either people are going to listen and follow the memes and they'll have, and you know, there's a Nazi that they've just made, or people will get disgusted and leave. And you know, they want this. They know that this is the game, and that's how they hollow out communities. You know, because they make all the people who are actually native and want to be in the community, who started and did the work to build it, leave. Because the people who are in charge don't have the balls to kick the puny little fucker who's posting the racist black meme.
I saw this, it's not a meme, it was a picture that somebody had posted to Leftygram, where it was this black model. She was absolutely drop dead gorgeous. Yeah, so she was a computer programmer that had like multiple degrees in various fields, and like they were just like joking, oh, like the only thing that you could do is do the Hello World program in those languages. She stated her credentials and then said, you know what, this is why women don't want to work in computing and STEM. It's that same exact thing, that just, it's an attitude that if it doesn't get rectified, and if we don't push those people out, then they're going to push everybody else out and run the community, and then it just becomes their own recruiting ground for their ideology.
We can fight them on Twitter, and we can kick them out of the conventions that they may worm their way into, but like, we really kind of need normal people to start giving a shit. We need these room admins to give a shit. Because I already go into these rooms, these rooms full of people that a year ago were somewhat normal, and now it's just a bunch of Nazis repeating Nazi talking points. All of the scum has just gathered in this room and is just mucking it all the fuck up. And the mods don't care.
Right, and then the mods don't care when these same people are planning shit, you know, behind their back in secret chat rooms to raid their channels, and are intentionally doing this and bragging about it.
Yeah, and like they've already got like the mods and adds into the room docs. They're just sitting on it waiting to release it if they do shit, right? So these people have dug their own grave and not realized that these people are snakes in the grass. And like the whole admin system of the internet, the whole way that internet boards and chats were implemented It was just the stupidest fucking idea. Because you just have this admin there that can just fucking get rid of anyone they want. You can't say anything or do anything because they just say shut up SJW and then kick you. There's no democratized... They like to do this with porn rooms, specifically rooms and not safe for work rooms and rooms related to porn channels, because they know that gets a lot of look. They take over that and the furries are just going to flock to the porn. As hard as we fight here, in the little furry anti-fascist resistance circles that we've built of 100 or 150 so of us, they can eventually just wait us out, right? We can win on the convention front, but really admins need to start taking this shit seriously, and they don't. They just consider it noise.
Well, the admins aren't going to do anything until they find themselves doxxed, just like Dragoneer didn't
Dragoneer.
Dragoneer didn't do anything until it was personal to him, and then all of a sudden, it's a big issue. Getting back to more serious things, the U.S. is revoking passports that belong to American.
After they've already left the country, so they can't get back in.
Sometimes. So yeah, that's been one strategy that they've been doing is, somebody will go to Mexico and then they'll find out that their passport was revoked while they were in Mexico. This mostly seems to be happening along the South Texas border. The people being targeted are people that had their birth certificate signed by a midwife and they were birthed at home. And what's going on here, this is an old George W. Bush policy where they would denaturalize citizens based off of this particular midwife has known forgeries on it, that they signed papers stating that the person was born in America when they were born in Mexico. But the problem is there's no way really proving this, and in the cases that they are asked to prove it and they are able to do it, one of the guys, he was this all-American, served in the Army, Border Patrol agent, and he works as a prison guard. So, full-up bootlicker, right? This happens to him. He gets his papers pulled. So even serving the state for decades, it meant nothing to these people in terms of his citizenship. And they just pull his stuff. And then when they ask him to prove, you got to prove that you're born, provide us some records. And they asked for the mother's prenatal care certificates, his baptismal certificate, rental agreements his mom had when he was a baby, proving that she lived in the United States. And then they still denied him based off of all of it. These aren't even records most people even have. If I were asked for this kind of stuff to prove my citizenship, well, one, I was never baptized, so that goes out the window. Other than a birth certificate, I can't imagine anything else to prove that I was born here. I don't even think my parents would have any of that.
None of it is surprising, and it's all expected. The beginnings of a fascist state. These are them flexing their muscles and figuring out what they can get away with. And, Democrats aren't adding actual opposition, aren't actually helping, blocking anything, just going right along with it. What do I even really have? I always respond to these kind of stories with just sort of yeah, and, because it really kind of is, yeah, and. The president's a fascist. Do you want a fascist country? The fascist country seems to be being built with probably more resistance than he expected, but still, it's getting built. And, there's children in camps, and we're revoking passports and all sorts of stuff.
And there's even a few cases here where they didn't leave the country, and ICE just shows up at their door, threatens to detain them. In some cases, actually does detain them and confiscates their passports. So, you're absolutely right. And the problem here is that all of this is being done without any due process. So, like you said, the fascist state's already being built. And pretty soon, all it's going to take is just the accusation that you don't belong in this country, and they'll just ship you anywhere that they feel like.
What is there to say? People are having two reactions: ostriching and going out and doing what little resistance they're able to organize. And ostriching is by far more popular. I wonder if even I'll be sorry, when the people who have ostriched get what the fascist state is going to do to them, because it's not like we didn't try to get people on board. I don't want that to happen. The key component here is workers need to realize that they're workers. They're nothing else. They're not their manager's friend. They're not assets to the company. Their work isn't valued. They're just workers. They're brought in to work and they're exploited and they're sent home to starve. Once they realize that, they'll realize they need to do something about it. And until that realization comes, there's no resistance. There's nothing that's going to be done. Fascism is just going to march on its way in. Meeting whatever little like street resistance, the anti-fascist M80 firecracker they're going to be met with, but just even march the way through unless workers wake up and realize that they're workers and nothing else. They're exploited workers. There's no other relationship. There's nothing else going on there. Their work is what allows all this to be possible, and what they need to do is they need to stop working. Until that revelation comes to the people, it's just a matter of time.
It really is just full on fascism at this point, because like that's the only thing that you could really draw parallel to, because of how the system is targeting people of color. Like, we just had a study that came out that showed that almost 3,000 people died in Hurricane Maria, which was the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico. And the thing is that there's another massive hurricane that also hit the country that year in Houston. The mobilization efforts were so vastly different that it really goes to show that the Trump administration didn't care that these people were American citizens. It treated them as second class. It gave them a second-rate response to the emergency. It created what is the fourth largest natural disaster in America's history before 9/11.
So, like, a lot of our show is about, look, the fascists are being fascists.
So the interesting thing about this study is this was done by the George Washington University Milken Institute of Public Health. The official U.S. government figure was just 64 deaths, and they counted it up to 2,975, which is a factor of over 46 times. But the way the study was done is it did a comparison counting the number of deaths over a span of 8 years, averaging things out, and then also taking in the difference of people leaving the island because they did evacuate or decided to evacuate thereafter. So a lot of factors went into this, and this is like right up in line with the University of Texas's study, which was showing numbers as high as 4,600 people dying. So all of the independent studies seem to suggest about 3,000 people, if not more. Just the fact that the response was just so vastly different, when really it's not that the U.S. government couldn't have responded in a manner that would have been effective. The government chose not to do so. After Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, they had 70 helicopters in the air in a matter of days, and it took weeks to do that during Maria. The amount of money over almost 2 weeks that was approved for Harvey was $140 million, but for Maria, $6.2 million. So there was a huge difference in the response here. And part of it is because Puerto Rico is not treated as it should. These people aren't being treated as Americans, and it's obvious why.
Because they're brown.
Yes.
They're brown and they're a colony.
And they
imperial holding.
I mean, it's just like when I used to work at the credit union, I used to get people that would be upset because they would say, why do I have to press 1 for English and 2 for Spanish and all this, and I shouldn't have to press buttons to speak to English. Like, one of our biggest areas of service. Yeah, one of our biggest base of operations was the island of Puerto Rico. And then they always give some other excuse, like when you tell them that, like, oh, they should speak English because they're not real Americans then.
So you didn't hang up on them? I thought you just hung up on them.
Yeah, I did hang up on about half of them that did that.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna deal with that. Like, you call in, you be racist, you get hung up on.
Why aren't you doing something about it, you shit wage labor?
One of the other things though that created this disaster though was Trump refusing to lift the Jones Act and he took like 10 days to, come to a decision to do it. And then thereafter, it was like a 10-day waiver. And of course, the Jones Act,
Jones Act is where we embargo our own territory, right?
Right, yeah. So that's where we require all goods carried between U.S. ports to be carried on U.S. flagged ships constructed in the U.S. and owned and operated by U.S. citizens. And it makes goods already more expensive to enter Puerto Rico. But what it also does is when there's a disaster, it makes goods more difficult to enter the territory. And then when they finally did enter the territory, they sat on the tarmac or in the ports and the food rotted or whatever, while Trump goes to Puerto Rico, does his little speech and tosses towels to people.
Whoop-de-doo. Always make sure you know where your towel is.
This is really? We're going for that? We're going to make a 42 joke next?
Put the towel on your head, lie down, and get ready to die.
But the whole thing about this is like, this all could have been prevented because we have a whole section of the military that their entire job is like large-scale engineering projects. So we have like some of the best civil engineers in the world. He could have deployed those people down to Puerto Rico to fix up the roads and stuff like that, clear things out, and start restoring power. It's just yet another choice that he refused to do. And just the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers weren't really called out for this, should be shocking and should be indicting to his motivations. Like we have said earlier, have shown that he definitely does have those white nationalist tendencies, and he probably doesn't consider these people real American.
I mean, like I said, the fascists are being fascists. That's what they do. What we really need to be working harder.
Yeah, getting back onto this, because one of the other things that I wanted to kind of like go over, like in kind of conjunction to the whole like Hurricane Maria thing and like the government treating people as second-class citizens. Flint doesn't have any water, but also neither do Detroit schools now. 16 of the 32 public schools that were tested for unsafe water and found the presence of lead and copper in it. And this is all the while the Great Lakes Water Authority has been assuring the citizens of Detroit that their water is safe to drink. So this is yet another city in Michigan, and also mostly minority, where this is happening. Is it going to be another one of those situations where is Detroit now just going to be without water, or a large portion of the city going to be just without water for 4 or 5 years? So
you have much more, because you're from the South. You have more experience organizing with Black people. Why hasn't Flint just seceded yet? Why has there not been a communist revolution? How is it that neighborhoods end up deprived?
Because everybody has been made so desperate they can't. That's one of the ways in which communities are controlled in America. Like, not just like African American communities, but white communities too. That's why we don't see any resistance in the U.S. Is that, like in Flint, these people spend a good portion of their day waiting in line to get bottled water.
So why does that preclude revolt? Or at least why aren't they all communists? Like, how do you end up with your neighborhood filled with lead water you can't drink, and people don't walk in and say, hey, here's this book about capitalism that tells you why you've all been screwed. Here you go. And it spread like wildfire.
Because these communities are so heavily policed that if you were to do this, there's a chance that you could wind up in jail and disappear. Like that's a very real thing in some of these. The other thing is that the policing is done in such a manner, it is absolutely terrifying. They live in a police state that is on par with being surveilled by some of the worst police states in history. Like that's where we're at with, like, the police have I forget what they're called, but they're basic sound amplifier things that they could just point from across the street and listen into, people's conversations and stuff like that from like 100 yards out.
It boggles my mind. My hope is that, there's a story from the Russian Revolution that very shortly after it, Stalin and Trotsky and Lenin were sitting around a table, and a bunch of Red Army soldiers come up and drop a bunch of books on their table and said, "We found the headquarters of the secret police and we took all their books." And Stalin starts opening the book and his face starts to fall. His mouth starts to open. He looks at Trotsky and Trotsky looks at the book and his mouth starts to fall open. And Lenin says, "What?" And Stalin says, "Half of the people in the party were working for the secret police." Lenin says something like, "Well, when the winds of history are behind you, none of that matters anyway." God, you gotta hope that that's what's happening here, because if the neighborhoods who don't even have water end up policed so badly they can't even talk about how much it sucks not to have water.
Well, that, and on top of that, like, there's a snitch culture. So, like, if you snitch on your neighbor, you're gonna get rewarded. So in a way,
what do we do in areas like how, like, this is where the revolution should be starting, and yet it's buttered before it's even.
These are places that definitely do need to be targeted for recruitment. But the thing is that stuff needs to be done, and it needs to be done in a tangible manner. This is not something like you just like leaflet around. This is at the point where you form the Red Guard and have them do civil projects, and then when the police roll up and say, "Hey, you stop doing this, you can't do that," then they need to confront them.
But to have the Red Guard, you have to have a sizable enough part of the population to be communist. So you have to start with the leafleting. Like
the thing that we need to start with first is workers' unions and tenant unions, and get people on board with that. Get people on board with things like the IWW.
Which is why we should start spamming live chats with union information.
Well, I really don't think that online confrontation works. It doesn't change people's minds. It never changes people's minds. It's the same principle of like online arguments. Nobody that has ever gotten into an online argument has ever changed their mind.
True.
That stuff doesn't work. And then on top of that, you're probably going to get this person in trouble for even just, viewing it or you're taking notes. Because the thing is like, if you send this kind of stuff, even if they do take notes or whatever, one, their computer's logged.
Well, they're not going to take notes on the computer. Like when I did it, I told them to write it down, like your employer is watching, and then I quit before they had a chance to say anything back.
Here's the thing. Like I worked for AT&T. They did not let us have paper. When I worked at, if you got caught taking any piece of paper from the floor to out, you could get in trouble.
Jesus, how do people not realize they're slaves? How do people go to work and think that they're doing like this is good, like this is normal? They just need to work harder and try to climb the ladder and get up, and they'll start their own business one day. How is this still coming out of people's mouths and not just sounding stupid when you can't even take paper? How is this so hard?
Well, you see, it's about customer security and everything. You're protecting the consumer's data, and they give you reasonable, tangible reason that they give that does actually make sense. That, like, I wouldn't want somebody there with a notebook that could take down my information either, right? And then, of course, they log and monitor the computers. You copy and paste something to a text file, they know that you've done it. So that's all there in part to make sure that you aren't doing anything fishy, but also it can be used against you as well. So it's a double-edged sword. The systems really aren't there for the purpose of spying on workers. It just turns out that the same system that protects consumer data works really good for spying on employees too.
I guess, it's not even with that, it's just mind-boggling how people...
But people are actually going out there and acting, though. Like, we did have 2 events of just absolute direct action where 2 Confederate monuments were toppled in less than 2 weeks. We had Silent Sam, the Confederate statue at the University of North Carolina, taken down. We had another Confederate monument in Sylvania, Georgia, near Savannah, that was taken down as well.
I do direct action too. I go out and I will, slap stickers on things and post union leaflets on the service doors of strip malls, and it's individual action. Wasn't Silent Sam pretty big? How many people would have had to have come to? There
were dozens of people there, from what I saw there. There were so
then that's good. That's organization. That's not a spontaneous thing.
Right. And when I say dozens, like, I mean several dozens. Like, there was easily, I would say, looking at it in the picture, probably 40, 50 people, and there are probably way more than that there. And they put ropes on this thing and took this thing down like a Saddam Hussein statue after the war. Which is kind of funny, right? Because, like, all the people that defend this kind of stuff, like, they always talk about, like, it's history and, like, heritage and stuff like that. But, like, you don't hear any of these people, like, complaining about the Iraqis taking down the Saddam Hussein statues. They praise that. They praise it anytime a Lenin statue is taken down. That's history as well. But God forbid some, like, no-name general or no-name Confederate soldier gets taken down when there's hundreds of these cheaply built monuments strewn all across the South. It boggles my mind, because, like, how many monuments to, like, real heroes are there in the United States? Yeah. Like,
how many Harriet Tubman monuments?
Frederick Douglass. Monument I want to see is, I want to see somebody make a John Brown statue and put that sucker up.
Right in fucking Kansas.
How about even better? Put it up in the city of Harper's Ferry. See, that's what they need.
Harper's Ferry is still around?
Yes, it is.
So here's my question. The people who go and they tear down the statue, how many of them go back home and know they're workers?
So most of these people that did it in this particular case and that seem to be doing it seem to be students. So I really don't know on that one. A lot of them do seem to be at least sympathetic to leftist causes and actual leftist causes. Like, when you go on Twitter and you see the people's accounts that are doing these kind of things, like, they definitely in the least seem friendly, and for the most part, from what I've encountered, they are actually comrades doing this.
Okay. Like I said, in order for anything to change, workers need to realize that they're workers. Otherwise, you can pull down the statues, you can march in the street, you can even throw Molotov cocktails, but until the workers realize they're workers, nothing's changing.
It's that old like hippie phrase, out with the old boss, in with the new.
It's these people need to also be spreading, those ideas, because otherwise they blow the liberals out of the water with their protests. They actually tear down statues as opposed to march in circles and thank the police. I feel like I said, workers need to realize that they're workers. I hope that this is the height of their activism, but that every day, they don't just tear down the statue and go home. Just every day.
So you're hoping that this is a sign of, like, deeper praxis to come.
Yeah.
This isn't just a show.
Yeah, like, this isn't just fuck the Nazis. Because, you would have a motivation then, right? Like, even if you weren't a communist, like, these people came and continue to try to come and fuck up your city and run over your friends and make the city a living hell, and they keep coming because of the stupid statue, so get rid of the statue. I'm sure there's a lot of radicalization, there's a lot of waking up, because, what's been tried what was tried every time Milo wanted to come to a campus? Go talk to the college administration, say we want this, they ignore you. Continue to do that, they ignore you. Then they start slapping fines on you, start having campus security chase you around. They want the money from the ticket sales from having this racist come here and sell out your friends for being illegal immigrants. They want the Nazis to come to fill the city to spend money in the shops is what they probably think that these people are going to do, because they're used to protests, and protests are profitable. Where there's usually a liberal protest, there's a good many stores that have a good day, because liberals are stupid when it comes to like protesting. They tend to go and spend money in the shops and then walk in circles and thank the police. So it falls on deaf ears. So like eventually they're going to get the message, wow, I don't matter as much as money. Like eventually the light goes off. I do work with a homeless charity. It's a no strings attached ordeal. It's not like through a church. We just go and we bring food. And man, these people are there. Like every conversation I have with someone that I don't know, with a stranger, I try to see how far along they are in class consciousness. How much do you get? And a lot of the time it's, it ends with Trump sucks. Or it starts with Trump is great, and then I immediately end the conversation with, usually ends with Trump sucks. Maybe they'll get a little bit farther and they'll go, well, sometimes I think I'm not appreciated at work, or, well, this one time my boss, or, and but man, I had a conversation with these homeless people, and these are working homeless people. These are people who have been construction workers for 20 years and homeless for 20 years. Sleep outside, hide in a place where they can sleep outside their construction center or construction zone where the police won't chase them off.
Almost half, if not a little bit more than half, of homeless people actually do have jobs.
And man, I didn't even have to say two words and they already started quoting me like class. They explained class divisions. Of course, not like using Marxist words. Like they've never read a damn one of his books, but they figured it out. Even to the point where when I said, well, if we all owned it, that wasn't a bizarre idea to them. It was like, that was the logical idea. I'm like, whoa, these are the people. These are the people you start with, because these are the people you have to do the least waking up with. They're ready to go.
One of the reasons, like, that you asked me earlier, like why do people in these communities not revolt or anything? A lot of it is because the police know how to find all these people, and if they didn't, they would just destroy their neighborhood anyway. The National Guard would roll in and all that stuff. But the other thing is that they do have something, if not small, to lose. Like in this particular case, like you're talking about people that have absolutely nothing, zero, zilch to really lose here. Because they're homeless. And so, I mean, that in a part, it places you in that kind of a situation where you start realizing this. But the other thing is a lot of these people do like have those kind of thoughts. Like they know what's up. Like they're not dumb. They're just afraid of the consequences of actually organizing and doing anything. And if you speak to a lot of homeless people, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, they're afraid of organizing and everything. There are places that where people have tried to basically organize and unionize the homeless people so that they could deal with aggressive city policing and whatnot.
And that was exactly my first thought.
And, yeah, exactly. And a lot of times is you will start getting resistance there simply because these people are afraid of the police because they're vulnerable to them, and they're vulnerable in ways that we're not.
Vulnerable to them.
Well, they're vulnerable in ways that, so they are vulnerable in ways that we're not, because a police can just walk into a homeless camp, shoot a bunch of people, walk off, and then come back later and say, I don't know what happened. I stumbled upon a crime scene. And that's the difference. It makes it much more easier to do it to homeless people. And then people aren't going to care or aren't going to think to look into it. So you have to understand the position that these people are in. But
if we can't even start with organizing the most awoke people.
This is all a very slow process, right? This is not something that's going to happen overnight.
No, I know, and I always want it to happen faster than it possibly could, because, we need this stuff like yesteryear.
Right. It's like we needed community defense leagues and the ability to defend ourselves back in 2015, and people refused to do it. And I still know people that refuse to take steps to even basic defense because they don't want to carry a gun or they don't want to do anything that might be violent or whatever. They can't. And then they just say victims shouldn't have to worry about that. Well, guess what? If you're dead, then you're dead. I mean, it's cruel. That's the material analysis on it. It's better to be alive than be dead in that
I know.
respect.
And you know, I the other night was looking at pictures of guns. It's like, I don't even know the first thing I'll buy a gun. I don't even know where I would buy a gun. I don't even know how. I don't even know how much these things cost. This is not my world. And I just looked at them and like I kept thinking, killing machine. These are machines to kill. They have one purpose to be built, and that is to kill people. And to own one is a declaration that you will either want or acknowledge that you may have to kill someone.
Self-defense is no joke, but it's
but
necessary.
I get why those people have, like, I'm not even into that road to that someone walking. If I walked into a gun store tomorrow, I would freeze and walk out. Like, I already know I'm not.
Right, but what about...
We're leftists. We're not killers.
What about, like, learning self-defense, though? Yeah,
that same thing, but guess what? It's $200.
It is
no
expensive,
one steps up
but...
to just do it in the park. So, like, except our homeless charity tried to do that. We got, like, an actual, like, martial arts guy, and where at churches where homeless would come for food service, like an hour before the food service, we'd hold training and practice. And we got like 2 really committed people, and they were women. And then it just fizzled out. Like not even the homeless were interested in defending them.
I really do think though, like we really do need to double down on that. I think leftist
call them the Red Guards ready.
I think leftist dojos are a great thing because they allow us to practice self-defense. Also, it is exercise, and the right practices all of this. And the reason that they practice this is so that they can go out and do the things that they want to be able to do. And they've had 3 and 4 years of practice on this, if not more. And what have we been doing? This is a very dangerous situation. The right has this proclivity towards violence, and they're preparing to commit more. That's what I was saying. We're leftists. We want to feed people, and we don't want to kill people. So we don't want to go get the guns. That's not how we think, and that's a very alien thing to us that we would have to be in a situation to be forced to do. So I get why people aren't going and doing that. We don't look at guns and say, "Oh yeah, let's kill someone." You know, something tells me that like Rosa Luxemburg had a gun. Like,
well, of course Rosa Luxemburg had a gun. And those workers had guns, but it's not a part of our fundamental philosophy, kill people we don't like. So we don't just naturally gravitate to them. And add that to a climate where like there's fucking school shootings and going off every week.
It is uncomfortable, and it's an uncomfortable situation, but given the choice here and given the situation, these people aren't just gonna roll over.
No, and I'm on your side, but like it's to be brought, like we have to each bring ourselves to that point, and it makes it a lot easier knowing other leftists who are at that point. I don't know, maybe we should start a leftist gun chat, you know, like except that's like just this.
That's the SRA
fodder.
Right? That's Socialist Rifle Association.
I know, but that's also cop fodder.
Yeah, it is cop fodder. Guns. So yeah, that's true.
Which is another reason why it makes it hard for why we don't all have guns. So it's like that's why we've developed such a different fighting strategy. For all the right wing's propensity to guns and shit, and they have one tactic: run at the enemy, shoot them. That's it. There's no variety, and like they'll do it no matter how many times they fail.
When they are aggressive at protests and counter-protests, the right pretty much has this strategy of just charging. All you need to do is learn the specific formations for countering basic charges, and then also just basic defense and practice it to deal with a person that is charging you. That's all you really need to do. And yeah, it takes years to be able to be proficient, at least 2 years to be able to be proficient in this kind of training, but it pays off. And then the other thing is that it has other applications. You can use it outside of some right winger, you know, coming at you on the street or whatever, or at a protest. But
so how would we do this without immediately being infiltrated by cops and having news tabloids about armed communists organizing for revolution going on the 9 o'clock news? We'll add more. Oh, suddenly we'll get gun control, right? Like we do this suddenly.
So we do to dojos what the alt-right did to anime.
But the dojos are $200 a month. Like,
or we take people like
I
let's
wonder,
say
I
like
wonder whatever happened. Let me see, because like we're not the first to have this idea.
So
there was supposed to be an Antifa dojo in Chicago, and that was like in 2016. I don't know whatever happened to it.
but yeah, I think that it's a good idea, and maybe we could just kind of form our own. Last topic on the line here before we go tonight.
God, I search Antifa dojo, and the first thing that comes up is a fucking video by Dojo.
No, don't. Okay, so yeah, folks, don't type in Antifa Dojo into YouTube, because there's a furry named Dojo Dingo or whatever, Dingo Dojo, and he's like just not. He's pretty slimy. Let's just put it that way.
Okay,
Luckily, we could talk about him on the show and not worry about him suing us because he's not Roy Calbeck. The saga of Alex Jones, the man that we frequently talk about and end our show on, has now ended. He's been banned from Twitter. So unfortunately, we probably won't be hearing very much more about his antics, or will we?
And the only one crying about him is Jimmy Dore.
Yeah, the only one crying about him is Jimmy Dore. But like, apparently the guy is, however, a man of taste, or he has a very refined taste of pornography.
Was he caught looking at gay furry frog porn?
No. Actually, he was caught during an ad read on his show. He was having some computer issues, so he pulls up the website for his like super vitality or whatever, brain force or something like that on his phone, and he had like all his like tabs visible on his phone too. And it turns out he was looking at some porn, but it wasn't just any porn. It was a transgender porn, and they were able to source it to a particular model too, Marissa Minks, who is, by the way, really hot, and she is on Twitter, so you can check her out.
Have we offered to give her a persona yet?
With that kind of name, like, she needs a persona, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
it's super easy too, right? Like, it's already said and done.
Like, bam, there you go. Yeah, somebody give Marissa Meeks a persona. The interesting thing is like, despite like Alex Jones's like awful behavior towards trans people, she was kind of like really lighthearted and funny about it. She kind of like trolled him because she gave him a free lifetime membership to her website, which,
and that's always it, right? Like, this is a big crime behind the scapegoat of trans people in alt-right propaganda. Like, trans people, they don't go up to you and they don't scream, "Did you assume my gender?" while having blue and red hair and glasses that are 3 times too big, right? Like, that doesn't exist. Trans people are always more like scared because they face so much shit in their life that to do the "did you assume my gender" bullshit is so heinous, because it really makes a monster out of the most quiet, meek, and polite people. I've never met.
It's such a rare phenomenon that the few times that it does happen, it almost like, okay, so that phrase from the video, because I know where they get the video from. That person was not a trans person in the original video that they make fun of, 1. But 2, even if that's the case, it's only a few examples that they ever really even cite. And they always cite the most obnoxious stuff too, or they entrap people into an argument and then like cut it out or edit it or whatever to make it into something that it's not. So there's always some like disingenuous drive that's behind this. But really what makes like everything so egregious about like the whole Alex Jones thing, because it's like haha funny, whatever, like kink shaming, because it's the media and that's what we do in America, and Americans are immature. But the thing that makes this also
it's worse than kink shaming, because
right.
It'd be kink shaming if it was just, oh, you like trans people. But it's like he spent his like past 2-3 years since trans people became a scapegoat of the right wing. That
for Alex Jones, like, this is a guy that like literally has said on his show that trans people are demonically possessed and want to create a race of cyborg or hybrid humanoids to destroy the human race. Like, just obnoxious BS. He had a conspiracy theory about Joan Rivers being killed because Joan Rivers was saying that Michelle Obama was really a man. That's the kind of ridiculousness that he spouts on his show. And then he goes on these long and creepy rants about like how much he loves women this entire time too. And he just,
I never suck a ding dong.
I never suck a ding dong. Yeah, exactly. Or just like, but the other thing is like his rants about like him and his behavior around women, you get creepy vibes from listening to him. Like, seriously, go out there and YouTube, Google Alex Jones talking about how much he loves women or whatever. It's freaky stuff.
So, like, I like where this comes from, like where they've been made such scapegoats, and it's all like running from their own id, right? It's all running from the idea, not that they're all really trans, but like there could be anything feminine about them, right? Anything weak, because they associate weak with femininity, whatever. I've never ever met a trans woman who was someone I would be afraid of. I've never ever known a trans person to be all, did you assume my gender? For the most part, it seems like, you know, it's
a straw man argument. They've created a straw man or straw woman or whatever in this particular case where they don't have to argue with an actual trans person. They just argue against their idea of a trans person. And it's intellectually disingenuous. Like, to top all of this off, these same people that do this, and you're right, it is their own id that they're afraid of. It is their own like subconscious feelings like in them that either they're gay, they're not as masculine as they should be, or maybe they are. Maybe they are and want to be, but they know they'll never pass, or they're sexually frustrated because they can't get laid. Just a whole like battery of different things. But the other thing is like, it definitely is that subconscious thing, because these same people that make such a big deal about this are the same people that are going on 4chan and 8chan and looking at, you know, what's called trap porn, which is this derogatory term. Well, that's what they call it. It's a derogatory term for, basically it's anime porn, or hentai as they like to call it, that's drawn, and it's mostly like, it's creepy because it's mostly like prepubescent, like younger boys, and it's nasty. And it really goes to show that there is that drive there, that they're afraid of something, and like this is their outlet to handle it, and then they could go out there and then like deny it public.
Fascists are gonna be fascists. They run from their own shadow, and they construct. They literally take over states and entire societies to gear and engineer that society to fight the dance in their brain. That's literally that they're scared of. That's literally what they do. That's what fascism is. If you are swept up in a fascist state, you are spending your life fighting somebody else's scary brain ghosts that don't actually exist.
So the worms in your brain,
different people that they kill because they know they can't kill whatever they're afraid of is inside them, whether that's being feminine or being gay or being trans, or in some respects just caring about other people.
So in other words, what you're saying is they have worms in their brains.
They have worms in their brain. They have worms in their brains, and the worms are the things that they're afraid of about themselves.
And my whole thing is that really, because I'm a forgiving person, right? Like, hey, Alex Jones could go on his show tomorrow and apologize about everything. And he should. I mean, in the least, involving this one incident. And this isn't the only thing that he should apologize for, but just in the least, if he were honest, he would admit to his audience that this is what he did and apologize for his actions in the past and say that he'll never do it again, and then don't do it again. And don't hide behind the excuses, and, you know, freaking own it. I mean, that's the whole, like, they like to say, like, manning up and stuff like that. Well, you know, he needs to man up about it, and he needs to admit, hey, this is what I like. There's no stigma in this. But the whole reason he doesn't, because like for his audience, like there is a stigma to it, even though like you said, gets all worms in their brain. There's no reason to be.
Well, yeah, and the thing that makes me not a fascist, despite having some reactionary moments, right? Like I get annoyed by screaming Mexican children in a grocery, right? By any screaming child in a grocery.
Right. So the difference is like when you see that, you just realize they're being kids, and they could just as easily be like some like white person's kids, because that same person that sees the screaming Mexican kids in there and then like shouts about how they're coming over here totally ignores the white kids doing the same thing. It's a cognitive filter where they're seeing the thing that they want to see.
Right. But also, I'm not even able to go down that road because I'm self-aware. It's not even that I have to cognitively think, well, wait a minute, white children scream in the grocery store too, and I should just be angry and want all children banned from grocery stores, no matter what. But no, I'm not actually serious. I'm aware of myself and aware that this is something that I really don't need to be afraid of. I know that I like men as well as women, and I do not let myself feel like that makes me a lesser person. If I felt that way at all, it's really easy to get sidetracked into fascism. If you're afraid of yourself, if you do not make it a facet of your life to confront the things about yourself that you're afraid of, if constant self-improvement is not something that you do in your life, then fascism offers an easy way out of that. Blame it on the Mexican, blame it on the Jew, blame it on the conspiracy.
Fascism glorifies war and violence. So fascism must always remain at war to perpetuate itself. And it sees this as being noble. And one of the problems is that eventually they run out of people willing to fight that war.
They run out of countries to invade.
They run out of countries to invade, but they run out of people to fight that war. So what happens is that all of these same people that sit there and are supporting all of it, they're just going to get swept up in it and killed, just like everybody else that they scapegoat. There's few survivors in a fascist society, and those that do survive live lives that are bereft of culture, which is ironic because like that's the whole thing that they think that they're trying to preserve is like the culture and their tradition, and they just end up in a society that is at constant war and bereft of culture and tradition. And then what is it that they have to fight for at that point? Like all fascism does is destroy. It doesn't really create things.
It's death throes. It's a fit.
Right. It's the rot of capital. If you do like our show, thank you very much for listening, especially if you got with us this far today without our third host here. We miss you, Eno, if you're listening. I hope we see you next week or whenever. Hope you're doing all right. But yeah, if you do like our show, give us a like, subscribe, comment on our stuff. Hit us up on Twitter at Enceladus1. My personal Twitter is at Kitsune Flame, and Hems, your Twitter is
at HemsFox.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So, hit us up, let us know what you think. And if you really enjoyed it, share the show with other people, because every listen definitely counts. Well, that's it for this week. Good night. Good luck.